What's going on, Titans fans? Will Boling here, getting you ready for kickoff. Can't believe it's here, week 1. And we're going to start our coverage on 104.5 The Zone coming up in 1 hour with Buck Rising. But right here, we're getting you ready for kickoff with our Titans digital pregame show. We've got clips from each one of our shows this week in case you missed them, starting with the install. Greg Cosell and Buck Rising take a look at the film and take a deep dive into who the Titans are going up against every single week, starting with Arizona and how to stop Kyler Murray.
Let's talk about another quarterback who seems it's still in the process of evolving as an NFL player. Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals will come here to Nashville in week 1 for a game against the Tennessee Titans. It's the first time the Titans have opened at home since, I think, the Mike Mularkey regime. This is an interesting game, Greg, mostly because I look at the Cardinals and I look at Cliff Kingsbury and the form of the air raid offense that he brought to the NFL out of college. I looked at their season last year that seemed to kind of peak with that Bills win, the Hail Murray touchdown pass. Yeah. Then they go on to lose 5 of their last 7 games, miss out on the postseason. And the 2 teams that they beat were 2 of the teams from the NFC East, which, notoriously has struggled in the last couple of years. With the way that teams faced them as the Cardinals went down the stretch, it seems like defenses were playing a ton of dime against them, and I didn't see any real adjustments from Kingsbury in that offense. What was your observations of this offense last year?
One thing I've learned from coaches who've coached in this league a long, long time and who are a lot smarter than I am, and they will tell you that coaches coach what they know. And Cliff Kingsbury is a young coach. He's grown up in the air raid offense. That's what he knows. That's what he teaches. And by the way, that's why they drafted Kyler Murray, because he ran that offense in college. So when you really look at what I think, and we won't know this till Sunday, and this is something clearly that Mike Vrabel and the defensive staff, Shane Bowen, are preparing for, is they're going to have to play against 4 wide receiver personnel, 10 personnel, 1 back and 4 wide. And in fact, last year, the Cardinals lined up with that personnel package on more than 20% of their offensive snaps. So 1 of 5 snaps a year ago had 4 wide receivers, and you have got to be prepared for that because it does a couple of things. Number 1, it spreads the defense. Number 2, it makes the defense very often declare before the snap of the ball what they're doing, which always helps your quarterback. You want to give him more information before the snap as much as possible. And because it's spread, that also gives Murray room to run if he chooses to run. And right now, that element of his game may be the most dynamic. He can make special throws, but he's been very inconsistent and erratic as a passer through his first 2 seasons. And quite honestly, purely based on tape study, the tape tells you that he did not improve that significantly a year ago from his rookie year.
Yeah, that I guess that was going to be my follow-up, is basically how have you kind of seen him evolve since he came into the league? Because it's still, the game still very much looks the same when you see him out there. And I don't know if it's organized chaos when he runs. It just seems chaotic every time he takes off with the ball.
Yeah. I mean, we have to remember, as talented as he is, and believe me, he's got a really good arm and can make special throws, but he's short. And to live in that world as he grew up as a quarterback, he had to learn how to make throws against bigger people who were rushing him. So he makes a lot of throws off balance. And while he makes some phenomenal throws off balance, believe me, I could show you clips from a year ago, particular snaps where you go, wow, that's just a ridiculously good throw. He also misses a lot because at the end of the day, you're off balance.
Yeah.
So he's very erratic as a passer, but you have to be really, really conscious of his second reaction ability, his ability to move and make plays with his legs, because he's a super dynamic runner. Whether you want to put him in the Lamar Jackson category, and obviously the Titans are very familiar with Lamar from a year ago on 3rd and 9 when he ran 50 yards for a touchdown in the playoff game. But Murray is very, very good at that, and you have to be very, very conscious of it, and you have to decide tactically how you want to play that. I'm not smart enough to have a brilliant answer for that, Buck, but you have to have an answer for that.
Well, and Rashaan Evans compared Kyler Murray to Lamar, not in terms of physical size and stature, of course, but in terms of the way that they play the position. And maybe that works to the Titans' advantage to a degree because they have game plan for Lamar Jackson so many times over the last couple of years.
But you know what's so interesting about that? The offenses are totally different in stylistically, because when you play against the Ravens, you're playing against an offense that's built around the quarterback as a runner, and everything they do formationally, motion, they do a ton of motion. Last year, the Cardinals hardly did any motion whatsoever, and they run much more of a spread offense. The Ravens ran a multiple tight end offense with a lot of creative ways to get to basic run game schemes like, power, zone runs, pin pull, things of that nature. The Cards, even though the quarterbacks, you might say, are somewhat similar, what they do tactically is totally different.
Yeah. When they come out with their 4 wide receiver sets, one of them will inevitably be DeAndre Hopkins, who it seems like is going to get his numbers anytime he gets out on the field. The Titans intimately familiar with DeAndre Hopkins for all of his years in the AFC South. J.J. Watt as well, and we'll talk about the defense momentarily. But, Greg, I guess the question that I've gotten from a lot of Titans fans throughout the course of the last week is, who will the Titans match up on DeAndre Hopkins? And I don't necessarily know if it's a cat coverage type situation, like Mike Vrabel says. You've got this cat, I've got that cat.
Right.
How can they defend this kind of receiver when it's basically going to be all hands on deck?
Well, normally, and that's the thing about the air raid, unless Cliff Kingsbury has made adjustments over the summer, which again, we never know this when it's week 1.
Right.
But normally in the air raid offense, receivers line up to the same side a very high percentage of the time. And as I said, there's almost no motion. So Hopkins normally lines up predominantly high percentage to the left side of the formation. So if Mike Vrabel and staff decide on a cat coverage, Buck, that whoever plays right corner is going to get DeAndre Hopkins pretty consistently. And I guess we don't know the answer to that as we speak right now. Fulton's going to start. Farley's not ready, so it's going to be Fulton and Jackrabbit. We'll see. Jackrabbit Jenkins has, throughout a lot of his career, he's played both sides. He's played on the left, I think, more recently, but they may decide they just want to match up. We'll see. But again, then you're going to have A.J. Green likely on the other side. You're going to have Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore in the slots. They've got weapons.
Oh, I loved Rondale Moore coming out of Purdue. Even as much as I hate Purdue for where I went to college, he is such a fun player. One I think that would have fit well within with a lot of offenses, but certainly I looked at him when the Titans were in the market for a wide receiver and thought he would have been a fantastic fit here in Tennessee.
Yeah, even though he's a really, it was an interesting pick in the second round because he's 5'7", and obviously, he's an outlier because he's 5'7", but obviously he's got dynamic skills. I think he fits really well in the slot. He's explosive. He's laterally explosive. So this is an interesting matchup. I'm really curious to see how Vrabel and Bowen decide to match up. We don't know the answer to this because there's not a lot of teams in the NFL that line up with 4 wide. In fact, Arizona did 20% of their snaps. Buffalo did 15% of their snaps, and nobody else really does it hardly ever.
Right. Well, it's you're fascinated, and everybody here in the state of Tennessee is fascinated because they are waiting to jump on Shane Bowen's neck after how badly the defense performed a year ago. Not necessarily fair to place all the blame at his feet, but he's definitely the face of the defense, and that's been basically the rallying cry all offseason. Vance Joseph coordinating the Cardinals on the other side of the ball. A couple of new pieces. Well, at least we thought a couple of new pieces before Malcolm Butler was placed on the reserve retired list, but they do get J.J. Watt up front. Jordan Phillips, it seems, will not play in this game. Chandler Jones remains a threat on the edge, even though he's coming off an injury, a year where he was bogged down by injury. What do the Cardinals like to do on defense, and how does it square up with the Titans' run-based offense?
Well, it's going to be very interesting because I think the Cardinals, one thing about Vance Joseph is he plays a lot of man and he blitzes a lot, but a lot of that doesn't necessarily happen on first down out of your base defense. And it'll be interesting to see what the approach is with Todd Downing and staff, because when you look at this Cards secondary, I'm not even sure who's going to play in the slot right now.
No.
So I guess we're going to find that out on Sunday. So here's the question. Do you line up in your base and just say, okay, it's Henry time? And then the Cards don't have to worry about putting a slot corner out there. Or do you say, you know what? Let's get some 3 wide out there and see who they're going to play in the slot and feel like, hey, maybe we can attack them in the pass game, because their third corner right now, obviously they know who it is. I don't know who it is. I doubt you know who it is. They certainly know who it is, but I'm not sure, looking at their roster, who that's going to be. They drafted a rookie from Florida, Marco Wilson, in the 4th round, whose tape I kind of liked. He was a big-time high school recruit, same high school as Patrick Surtain and Tyson Campbell. Big-time recruit, started as a freshman in the SEC. So I don't know if he's won the job. I don't know. I don't know who the slot corner is going to be.
Yeah, well, they'll see Chester Rogers in the slot for the Titans. It was thought when Josh Reynolds signed here that might be the case for him, but he's been. But the other interesting thing,
keep this in mind: unless they're playing man and doing cat coverage and matching up, we know that Jones can line up in the slot. We know that A.J. Brown can line up in the slot as well. That's where A.J. Brown lined up the majority of his career at Ole Miss until about the final 5 games of his college career. Now, with the Titans, he's basically been the boundary X, but he has a ton of college experience in the slot. So now we're getting into matchup football, and that's the fun of and the excitement of week 1 is we don't know.
And you can find that entire conversation previewing week number 1 wherever you listen to podcasts under the Install with Greg Cosell. So you're going to get ready to hear Titans radio coverage coming up here in a couple of hours. But Mike Keith was on J-Mart and Ramon yesterday previewing this matchup, talking about the significance of what it means playing this weekend on 9/11 and also going up against this Arizona team.
Of that defense, though, Mike, which part are you more intrigued to watch? This secondary that's got some new moving parts, or this D-line? Because both have been talked about a lot. Which one are you watching with a magnifying glass this weekend?
Well, I want to see Danico Autry and Bud Dupree, so I guess you're talking about the front.
Okay.
And how much do those guys play? How much, I don't know. I don't know how they're sort of deployed in terms of what the Titans will do formationally. Do they, if they go multiple defensive backs, do those guys come off the field some? But I want to see those new parts. And the other thing I want to see, too, is I want to see the inside linebackers play together. Okay. Rashaan Evans looks like a Rashaan Evans of 2019 with Jayon Brown back. And I want to see if they can sort of pick up where they left off together. They were starting to get back to that last year, and then Jayon got hurt. Okay. And, those two together are dynamic, playmaking linebackers who make things happen. The fact of the matter is on defense in the NFL, guess what? The other team's going to move the ball. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen. The other team's going to gain 300 yards or 320 yards or 350 yards or 400 yards. Who cares? Give me the 3 or 4 plays that turn the game.
Yeah. That's
what defense is all about in the NFL, is you've got to have people make the 3 or 4 plays that turn a game. And do the Titans have some of those guys? It sure looks like it to me.
Last night, Tampa Bay and Dallas played. A lot of points scored last night. A lot of points scored. It was really good to watch.
A lot of completions, too.
It was. I don't think it'll be a problem for this Titans defense to score, but the other phase of this game is special teams. I think Dallas is missing 4 points last night. The 60-yarder that Zerline missed wasn't, I don't think many are going to make that if you're not in Denver. Right. Sam Ficken, though, has to play a part. No matter how many you score, you still got to make your, what you like to call chip shots, and you got to make the field goals that, hey, 40 and in, those are the ones you got to make. How much more important is Sam Ficken moving forward for the rest of this year?
50 and in you have to make. These guys are professionals who get paid a lot of money. And if the conditions are perfect, which they look like they'll be on Sunday, you've got to expect to make every kick 50 and in. Mm-hmm. And You've got to make all your extra points. You've got to be good on kickoffs. If they want you to kick it high and short to cover it, you got to do it perfectly. If they want you to kick it to Gallatin, that's what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever. Morgan Cox is a big factor. Remember, the Titans unfortunately had snapper problems last year. Bo Brinkley was not right. They had to do some other things as far as snapper, and that ended up being a big deal for them. Morgan Cox, I think, will solve that problem. Brett Kern being back, and, we know what he can do. He's the best punter in this franchise. His history statistically. The other area where I think this team can be different is I think this team can run back a kick or a punt.
Wow.
I think they are more dynamic in that area than they have been in some time. And so the special teams could be the difference in a game like this. And I think between the coverage units and who they have, and between the kicking game, that's a big deal. Remember, however, the other side, Arizona's pretty good on special teams. They blocked a punt in the first game last year.
Yeah.
So the Titans are going to have to be on high alert to not let something like that happen.
Mike, one thing that we have talked about all week as we started really looking at the Cardinals is it's not as much J.J. Watt by himself as what J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones can do for one another, how they can benefit and play off of each other. How worrisome is that for an offensive line where at least at the right tackle spot, we've got some questions?
Sure. Totally fair. And they're going to try to exploit it. You know that they're going to try to go after the Titans in that area. And remember, they've got Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons at inside linebacker who are both freaky athletic too. Big and freaky athletic. Their front seven is big. Big, big, big. And, it's a concern. The other concern is Budda Baker coming out of the sky, which is something that can certainly happen with, a Pro Bowl caliber player who shows up everywhere, sort of Troy Polamalu style. They'll bring him out of anywhere, and I think they're going to have him heavily involved in what they do in the front, trying to thwart Derrick Henry.
If I was to ask you who was going to be the starting at right tackle, I'm not trying to make you pick and choose who you're going to be more comfortable with, but who you think is going to get that nod, because still looking at the depth chart, it's three guys: David Quessenberry, Tyson Braylow, and Kendall Lamb out of that trio right there.
Well, the guy who's worked the most this fall, or it's not fall yet, summer, I should say. I'll get my season straight. I'm sorry. Quessenberry has worked the most. Now, he's played left tackle. He's played right tackle. But he got the majority of the work through camp. And so, you're looking at that. They have sort of said that Radens probably isn't that guy in week one. So, do you go with the guy who's had the most consistent work, or do you go with a guy based on a matchup? And that's the part I don't know. Ramon, you would probably know that area better than I do. Sambrailo's a little different player.
Yeah.
Lamb is not as big and long a player, but he's very athletic. He's also a guy you can use all over. And the other question, too, is with Nate Davis having been out and missed some time, and the fact that, Lawan is coming back from a major knee injury, and Saffold is 33, do you make a different move at right tackle so if you have to switch out someone else during the course of the game, you don't have to do the complete flip of people? I don't know. That's the honest answer with you is I don't know what you base it on. If you base it on who's worked the most, it's, and because he's worked a ton at left tackle especially, Quessenberry would be that guy, but I don't know that.
Yeah. Mike, we saw the Titans get a little bit of money back, a decent amount actually, in terms of converting Julio to a signing bonus, a good bit of his money. What do you think the rationale might be for that? I know every Titans fan immediately sees named free agents and wants to go after those guys, but it gives you some flexibility. You've got some guys that you have to pay. What do you think the answer there is, at least if you had to try and speculate?
I'm so glad you've asked me a question I can actually answer. I know this. The answer is, number one, you had to make a move because yesterday you went from the salary cap based on the top 51 salaries to now the salary cap based on the top 53 salaries as of today, as of late yesterday, to be honest. And the fact that you're having to pay practice squad and all the IR guys. So you were going to have to grab some money. But what they've done is they've given themselves a pool. And John Robinson wanted to have the breathing room. Without making that move, you don't have the breathing room once you go to the top 53, the practice squad, and the injured reserve form of the salary cap. So that's why this has been done. It's not based on any one player or any two players or a specific need. It's understanding that particularly with the salary cap like it is now, and particularly with the practice squad able to have a veteran involved, that you are probably going to need to grab somebody during the course of the year that's going to cost you some money. So this is about reserve, and if they're in a situation where they don't have to spend it, they can carry it to next year.
Mm-hmm. Mike, real special weekend this upcoming weekend. I remember being in the 10th grade when 9/11 happened. I was in American history class. The world stopped for us and for everybody. Didn't know what was going on. What was that like for you and your experiences? We played football that weekend, but it was kind of weird. I reflect back on it because I had a newspaper clipping of me just looking down. I didn't understand what was going on, but now we understand it, and we're here now. And this weekend is a celebration of 9/11 again. Well, not the remembrance.
20-year remembrance, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Remembrance of 9/11. What does that mean to you that weekend, if you can reflect on it also for the NFL? Walk us through that.
It was a Tuesday when it all hit, and we had a Jeff Fisher show that night. And there was just such a lack of understanding through the course of the day about what had actually happened. You know, at first we're like, okay, we've had a plane crash, and that's a horrible thing. Mm-hmm. And then the second plane hit, and you realized it wasn't a crash. And then the thing happened in the Capitol, and then the thing in Pennsylvania, and they took President Bush to a secret location, and the whole thing was unfolding during the course of the day. And by early in the afternoon, we had a full understanding that this was beyond anything, because if you weren't specifically in New York, it sort of had to reverberate through other parts of the country through the news media about what had happened. And so we had to cancel the Jeff Fisher show. And because I told my boss at the time, I said, we can't go on the air and talk about football tonight. And then I was hopeful that the NFL would realize its mistake from 38 years prior when it chose to play after President Kennedy was assassinated. It was a huge mistake. And the league did the right thing and chose not to play. It was 100% the right decision. And then we came back, and I was very proud to be an NFL employee at that point, because we didn't fix anything. We didn't solve the problems, because that's not what sports does, but we helped. We helped to restore some normalcy. We helped to give people an outlet. And I think that's what we did last year during COVID too. We helped. We didn't fix COVID. Right. We didn't solve every problem in this country, but we were there as an outlet. We were there that you could follow it, and you could enjoy it, and you could step away for 3 hours and just get caught up in your football world before you return to something very real. And I think that's the power of the NFL, and that's the power of sports, is we're there for people in a way that you can just enjoy. Now some weeks you don't enjoy as much as others, granted. But it's just, if you're playing fantasy, if you're watching with your friends, if you go to the Steelers bar in Nashville to watch with other Steelers fans, or you're going to Nissan Stadium and you're tailgating. I mean, I think that's what this is all about. This is not solving every problem in the world. We get it, but it's an outlet, and I think it helps. And I thought last year we did a great service to people, just as being able to have some normalcy, and I think that's the case this year as well.
Yeah. And once again, great conversation there. You can find the entire podcasted version of Mike Keith on J. Martin Ramon as you get ready for kickoff wherever you download podcasts. Well, his partner in crime, Coach Dave McGinnis, we're going to hear from him coming up in a moment. But first, a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Marshall Faulk on 3HL earlier this week talked about Derrick Henry and how the Titans can continue to keep up their good chemistry under Arthur Smith last year with a new guy calling plays in Todd Downing. Here's Marshall Faulk with our Don Davenport and Ron Slay.
You might know a little bit about cohesion offensively and rhythm and all of that. Yeah, you know. How about Hall of Fame running back Marshall Faulk joining us now on the line, courtesy of Bet Online. Marshall Faulk, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. How you guys doing?
We are doing great. It's game week. I mean, you can't complain. NFL game tomorrow night starting, and then obviously the Tennessee Titans on Sunday is what this city is ready for. Before we kind of jump into the NFL and what's going on and look across the league with you, you know, you were 13 seasons in the NFL, 4 with the Colts, which Titans fans are very familiar with, and of course that Rams team, which Titans fans are very, very familiar with. The greatest show on turf. We were just talking about this Titans offense with Ryan Tannehill and Julio Jones and A.J. Brown and some of the weapons that they could have and the potential for what this offense can be. But you were a part of the greatest show on turf while with the Rams. What was that rhythm and cohesion and just that experience like back then?
Just team. We played for one another. We didn't care who scored the touchdowns, who got the accolades. For us, it was mainly one score. We all score. That's why our end zone celebration. It's the bobbing weave was what it was, and so many people loved what we did because that whole idea of team and what we were about, it's something that people remember.
Yeah, you Marshall, appreciate you coming on with us. You always remember when it's about team. Going into it, I think you were a big part of what the Titans wanted to do going into that Super Bowl as far as trying to stop you, and they did. On the ground, in a sense, for having 17 yards, but
I was going to say on the ground.
Yeah, on the ground.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah,
get him, Marshall.
See what I'm trying to say is, but you did have 5 receptions for 90 yards, so I mean that kind of equal it out right there. What is that? You looking at it, Marshall?
I'm trying to come on here and support Tennessee. Why you bringing up? Why you trying to?
Hey, listen, man. I'm a realist, man. I'm gonna keep it 100. You know, I know what you did. So you looking at it, and you looking at the landscape of football, and everybody's wanting to get a dual threat back or 2 backs where one guy's a bruiser and one guy can do it as far as catching it out the backfield. You were a guy that was doing both of them way back then, and not to date either me or you, but back then at that time. What do you see as far as the running back? What is evolving to now today?
You have 2 rules of thoughts when you think about the game and how people play. Like you get yourself a Christian McCaffrey, you get yourself a Zeke Elliott, you get yourself Saquon Barkley, a Nick Chubb, and if you can't get that, then what you get is you get yourself about 3 good backs, and then you platoon. Or you can have yourself a Derrick Henry, and then you could have a complimentary 3rd running back, which is the old school way of how they used to do it. So there's no wrong way to do it. For your offense to be effective and for you to do the things that you want to do, you got to get the personnel to fit. Based on what Arthur did last year, and now we know Arthur's gone, now with the Atlanta Falcons as their head coach, you guys got to void the field there and having that coordinator and having the play callers kind of mesh into one.
Oh, that's big time. Don always harps on what is it going to be like with the chemistry of this new OC coming in, and how will people respond to him? What will he want to do? Throw his own wrinkle into it. So,
and how does he make the decision? I mean, when you have a playmaker like Julio Jones and AJ Brown, and add whatever else, and then on the ground, Derrick Henry, how do you make the decision of what direction to go? What do you see from those three guys? That, by the way, the Titans, odds to win the Super Bowl 28-1.
Yeah.
What do you see? What do you see from that offense and their chance to have a big year?
It comes down to Tannehill basically being the facilitator. And here's the thing: you can't keep everybody happy, so everybody has to kind of relish in the team aspect. It's what we did. I mean, when you look at what we had on that team with Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, Oz Hakeem, Ricky Prohl, myself, Ernie Conwell, Roland Williams. I mean, we had a lot of different ways we could have went. I mean, Amp Lee was on that team as well, the backup. But at no point in time did it matter to us who scored as long as we scored. And this team is going to have a lot of that, whether it's Julio or AJ or Derek. It doesn't matter who scores in this offense, because they have to look at it like we all scored. And that's where the whole team concept comes in. They have a goal to go out there and accomplish the things that they want to do. They want to set a standard for what kind of offense they're going to be. And we already know your head coach is a smash mouth, no nonsense kind of guy. Played against them many a time. And perfect identity for this team. And I look for, they're going to continue to be a run the football first and then allow Tannehill to throw the ball down the field. And now you can't just focus on AJ because you have Julio over there, and it causes problems for defenses. Not to mention your offensive line is one of the best in the league.
Marshall Faulk, Hall of Fame running back, joining us courtesy of betonline.net.
Marshall, now we got to get a little selfish, because what you're involved with now is not a team game. This right here, you're trying to get odds to fatten pockets around here. So you're looking at odds to win the Super Bowl. You got Kansas City, Tampa Bay, the ones at the top. Buffalo Bills. Who do you see in your aspect and your perspective of
Well,
it?
here's the thing. So there's once again 2 rules of thought. Okay, you go with the guarantees who you feel like that's going to be there. Obviously, Kansas City to compete in the AFC. You got to beat them. They're the cream of the crop,
right?
And they retooled their offensive line, which was banged up last year and kind of the weak point. And then Tampa Bay. It's Tom Brady, man. Like I don't need to say anything else. It's like it's Tom Brady. But that's if you just want to pick a winner. If you want to go out and make some money, then you look at the 28-1 in the Tennessee Titans. Then you say, okay, can the Chargers at 35-1, can they make a move because of they get a Derwin James back, they get a Bosa back off of injury, or you look at the Rams and you say 16-1 odds. The Rams, they made an upgrade at quarterback. Did they or didn't they? We really don't know if it was Detroit or Stafford, but you put an arm talent like that in his offense that's quarterback friendly. Oh, and Aaron Donald does play on that defense, not to mention one of the best cover corners in the league. Then you start playing the game of where's the money? Because last year, somebody made good money. A Tampa Bay fan made good money betting Tampa last year. I think Tampa they were like 25-1 odds or something like that. And that was good odds.
Now you look at it, you got the conference futures, as far as the odds to win the AFC championship, if you want to build up to get into the Super Bowl. You got, again, Kansas City at the top. But you also got guys that's being quiet, like the Cleveland Browns. What do you see with them and Baltimore Ravens, teams of that nature, Titans as well?
Yeah, Cleveland made a lot of noise. They made a lot of noise last year, and we were waiting for Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns to take that step. And defensively, I feel like they're going to take a huge leap. But offensively, how does OBJ incorporate himself into this offense and not become a distraction? Because we found out that Baker Mayfield, when he doesn't have to force feed a guy, he's actually pretty darn good. And the real sneaky one, people may or may not say it's sneaky. You gotta watch out for the New England Patriots.
Oh, I think that's sneaky.
Yeah.
You got to watch out, because if when you think about people said that, Mac Jones was a guy playing with all that talent over at Alabama. But in the preseason, what I saw was an accurate decision maker who's intelligent. And that sounds like somebody else I know.
Yeah.
And I believe in order to just let Cam go, they may have did him a favor, but Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick, they looked at this kid and it's like, wow, we're on to something here.
Right.
And they're sneaky. And I like their odds. I like 12-1 odds.
What do you think as far as MVP goes? Like, you got a dark horse in that, or is you load up on a guy like Pat Mahomes looking to rebound from last year?
I mean, it's easy. Pat Mahomes is easy. It's easy to go Pat Mahomes. It's easy to go Tom Brady. And the one that surprised, let's just talk surprise. 15-2, Dak. Like, I was like, wow,
right.
that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's an impressive one. But I'm gonna tell you a guy that I expect a lot from this season, because I think everybody's watching him, but nobody's really watching him. This system, and he's with one of those quarterback whisperers. Jameis Winston could have. People don't know. Jameis threw for a lot of yards. He just threw for a lot of interceptions. If in this offense, with his ability to push the ball down the field, because the Saints lost that with Drew Brees, he couldn't push it down the field last year.
Right.
A little banged up.
Right.
This offense could be dangerous. I'm telling you. Just keep an eye on Jameis Winston and what he's able to do. If he can correct the abilities, his propensities to throw interceptions, and a young guy, Justin Herbert.
I love
a lot of upside there. 16-1 odds for Justin MVP.
Like that.
Well, there you go. You can check out all those odds, betonline.net, updated Super Bowl, conference division awards, and, of course, win total for each team. On the way out, real quick, Marshall Faulk is our guest. You mentioned, Vrabes, Coach Vrabel, playing against him. We have to ask, are there any good, smack talking or some stories about Vrabes?
Nah, Vrabes didn't talk smack, man. He was, he was the guy that was, he wasn't the fastest, so he wasn't going to make a lot of mistakes. And he was so smart that you couldn't get him out of position. It's just a tough person to play against. Assignment, alignment, disciplined guy. And I enjoyed playing against him. I really did. He had just enough ability with his intelligence to play a long career and win as much as they did over in New England.
And last but not least, Titans fans, we've got Titans Radio's head coach. Here's Dave McGinnis talking Titans and Cardinals. How do you stop Kyler Murray? Well, here's the full breakdown this week with Blaine and Mickey.
Yep. I'll tell you who never misses any kicks. Coach Mack, he joins us now. Brought to you by Farm Bureau Health Plans. Need great health care coverage at an affordable price. Let Farm Bureau Health Plans coach you through it. They got you covered. Coach, when you were a young man out in Texas playing high school football, did you ever strap on the old kicking shoe and, boot a couple of field goals in the game?
Well, you were right, Mickey, in your first. I never missed a kick because I never attempted one.
Hey, I got to ask you.
Truth.
I got to ask you this.
Yeah.
This popped up on my phone today, and I thought, I'm going to ask Coach Matt because I know he has a story. On this date in 2003, Anquan Bolden played his first game in the NFL, and, Coach, he only had 217 receiving yards against the Lions.
Steve Mariucci up there when Mooch was the head coach at the Lions, and they were just into their new place. And yes, Anquan made a debut and really set the tone for what he was going to be throughout his National Football League career. The quarterback was Jeff Blake. They wouldn't let me re-sign Jake Plummer, if you'll remember. He went to Denver, and so we got Jeff Blake. And Jeff Blake came in there at the end of his career, still had a great arm, but Jeff Blake, and Lane's sitting there, he can tell you, threw one of the prettiest deep balls in the history of deep balls.
The best. That thing was like a punt.
Oh boy, but he still had an arm, and I tell you what, a couple of crossing routes he threw behind Anquan when Anquan would have had even more yardage. That game, but Anquan showed up that game. You know what though? If you ask Anquan Bolden about that game, because he and I have talked about it before since, and I'll tell you what, he cares nothing about the rookie record that he set. He cares nothing about that. He's more upset about at the end of the game in the fourth quarter, he dropped a punt that they recovered and took in to win the game. And so I'm just telling you, Anquan Boldin, there's no doubt in my mind that was one of the better draft picks I ever stood on the table for. No doubt in my mind when he stepped across the line to the National Football League, he was going to be a full-grown man from the start, and he proved it there in Detroit that first game.
It's interesting, Coach, because people always try to find somebody to comp everybody with. And when the A.J. Brown came into the league, there were some people who comped him to Anquan Boldin. We got a couple of years of A.J. Do you see some of that?
Well, I was the one that comped him. I mean, go back and listen to my draft reports.
I thought that was right.
I still got every draft book I've done since '86, and in the column next to AJ when I was doing it, I put in parenthesis, reminds me of Q, is what we call Anquan Boldin. Yes, tough, physical at the catch point, relentless off the line of scrimmage, would not be denied the football, and with the ball in his hand, he was a nightmare for second and third level defenders. So the answer is absolutely yes.
Good stuff. Coach Mack giving us the Mack attack on Blaine and Mickey.
Man, Coach, how exciting is it going to be to get back into the stadium with all the fans and hysteria and all the noise and interacting with the fans in the game in the NFL, especially with the Titans, of course?
Yeah, Blaine, look, last year was so unusual. What's this, my 36th season in a row in the National Football League? And last year, doing that game in Denver, that second Monday night game, to a completely empty stadium, and then empty stadiums for most of the season, was one of the strangest experiences I've ever had in over 650 NFL games that I've been involved in. Getting the fans back, even when we had 8,000 for the first time when they started letting percentages back in, it felt like wow, at least this is starting to feel like game day. Again, look, fans are a huge part of it. I know that you guys and our listeners watched the collegiate games last weekend. How great was that to see? How great was that at Camp Randall in Wisconsin? How great was that?
Jump around, Coach. Jump around.
In Tennessee at Nayland. Yeah, how great was that in Blacksburg, Tennessee, just to watch the fans. Look, fans are a huge part of the National Football League landscape, and I'm so glad they're back in it. I can't wait to hang out of the window in the broadcast booth and give fist bumps to fans.
Man, I know. I'm sure the fans can't wait to interact with you as well. I guess before we get started, what are the NFL, protocols for COVID this year? I know the Titans have a couple guys that's supposed to be coming off of COVID. I think the lineman there. But will they be able to play games if you have a breakout, or will they have to forfeit? What are the guidelines for that, or do we know yet?
Yeah, we know. I mean, everybody's going to get tested daily now, and if you test positive and cannot get two negative tests within a 24-hour period, then you've got to sit out. Just like what Coach Vrabel had to do. That's what's going to happen. Now, if you're unvaccinated, you're immediately gone for 10 days, regardless of what goes on. And so, to me, they've made it very clear what the protocols are, and we know what they're going to be. I think, I don't know exactly when these guys, and see, if guys go on, there's one of two categories: if you test positive, or if you've been in a contact tracing element with someone that has tested positive. And so I don't know what the specifications are of the two guys we still got on, but I think that we're expecting guys to be back.
Right. Well, and I was also, the other layer to that I didn't ask you is, will they be able to move games like they did last season, or that's out the window?
No, out the window. They are not moving games in the 18 weeks and the 17-game regular season that we're playing now. They've already stated they're not moving games. As far as they're not going to move weeks, they're not going to switch games. They're not doing any of that. That's just not in it for this year.
This is a two-part question before I throw it back to Mickey, and that is, what's the focus of the staff if it was you, with this extra little time, maybe a day or two of time, and what's some of the biggest challenges week one? Because as a former player, I would always be a little uncomfortable because I relied on instinct and studying film and tape. And sometimes they don't show you what they did last year. They may be doing something a little bit different, even though if it's the same staff as well as the same players. So kind of take us through that process from a coach's viewpoint as well as a player viewpoint.
Yeah, well, I mean,
plays, all kind of stuff.
Yeah, adjustments in the National Football League are part of it. I mean, you reach this level of coaching and playing, being able to make adjustments on the run. I mean, there are no excuses like Scott Frost liked to put out at Nebraska after they first lost to Illinois, saying, you know what, they did something different in their spring game, and we weren't ready for that. Well, please. So anyway, that's not an excuse in the National Football League. And so what you do, you watch the tape, you get your players prepared. But you know as well as I do, Lane, let's just say defensively. First thing you're going to do, you're going to have some default defenses to go to if they start doing something different offensively, so that you get a chance to regroup on the sideline. You know, and so, you know, you have those settle down defensive calls that you can automatically make, that if you're well prepared, that's what you always are going to have. And then depending on how much time you have during, you know, in between series, it's not just halftime adjustments. It's hard to make halftime adjustments, the National Football League, because it's only 12 minutes. I mean, so you've got to be making adjustments series to series to series. But this first game, you try to put as much preparation as a staff into what you think they might do, but you always tell your players going into it, look, the thing that you're going to have to rely on is technique and some of our base defenses if we get anything early, and it's the same thing offensively. If they start running pressure packages and they start giving us different looks over there, we've got some things that can counteract nearly everything that they do. May cut down on our call sheet, but it's not going to put us in a panic mode.
Keeping it real here, giving us the business. Coach Mack with the Mac Attack.
Coach, I wrote this question down a couple of weeks ago because I wanted to make sure to ask you week one. As a head coach, as a position coach, no matter where you were coaching or what position you held on a staff, what were your biggest concerns on week one heading into the first game?
Well, I mean, as a coach, you want to be sure your team's prepared. And it dovetails a little bit on what Blaine's question was, because you don't know either. You know, as a coach, I mean, you know enough with the information that you have, but you don't know exactly what they're going to do. And the other thing is, and it's not something you can control as a coach completely, but you can do it, is to how healthy your team is going into this. Because once you start training camp, or really after you get out of OTAs, your main focus is to get everybody that you can, your best players, to the max of your ability, healthy, to that first ball game. And that was always something that was on my mind constantly, trying to do that, along with the mental and physical preparation that you have to have going into every opponent that you're going to face, and especially against an uncommon opponent. We're starting out with an NFC West team, somebody that we are not familiar with. So there's always a little bit more mental that goes into that kind of thing.
And maybe the best conference, Coach, top to bottom, NFC West, right? I
don't think there's a maybe to it. I think they are. I mean, I really do. I mean, they are from top to bottom when you really start looking at what they have and the point as to where they are in the development of those teams, which is critical, in the National Football League. I think you are 100% right. I think the NFC West is from top to bottom the strongest division in football right now.
All right. One digital pregame down, and we're getting you that much closer to kickoff. Coming up next on 104.5 The Zone, Buck Rising begins our 104.5 The Zone FM radio coverage. But that'll do it for our first digital pregame show. Hope you'll join us right here, 8 a.m. every Sunday when the Titans take the field. We'll get you ready next week as well. But for now, tune in to 104.5 The Zone. Kickoff is right around the corner between the Titans and the Cardinals.